Benjamin Willis. I've spent 30 years of my life researching ufology, and to my benefit, to fully understand the alien enigma, I had to learn a fair amount about astronomy, physics, history, and theology. Now, it would be my pleasure to share the most compelling evidence I've learned about with you. I could talk about how Göbekli Tepe is a monolithic site predating any known civilization by thousands of years. Or how Pumapunku was built with the precision modern stonemasons would have difficulty recreating. Or how there have been ancient maps discovered that seem to show the Antarctic landmass as it appears under the ice. But all of that only proves that ancient man was quite a genius. I'm going to discuss the first known human civilization, the Sumerians and their gods. The Sumerians recorded many interesting details about their gods, the Anunnaki, but I'm going to focus on an aspect of their origin story. According to the Sumerians, the Anunnaki genetically enhanced early man, manipulating our DNA. This belief was so prevalent with early man, the Anunnaki symbol for genetic manipulation became the caduceus, our universal medical emblem. Now, is it just a coincidence that the ancient caduceus symbol resembles DNA? Now, as long as we're discussing medical anomalies, consider the FOXP2 gene.
FOXP2 is a gene that was found in our nucleotides, and it is something that sets us completely apart from any other animal. And scientists have suggested that that gene alone is responsible for language. And there is absolutely no evidence of origin, or that this thing somehow mutated from the animal kingdom towards us. So this gene exists out of nowhere, without any origin. So my question is it possible that this gene was given to us or grafted into us by extraterrestrials in the remote past?
Gene for language, Ed?
If FOXP2 is the gene in question here, this is a gene whose function is known because there is a family in the British Isles, I think, that has an inherited disorder. This family, you knock out one copy of this gene, and the disease phenotype is that people have a hard time processing speech and language, and some other more subtle aspects of the phenotype, like they have a hard time keeping a steady rhythm.
Mercury is a dangerous substance that you wouldn't think would be in use over 2,000 years ago. But when this Chinese pyramid was initially excavated, news broke of the emperor's tomb within and the terracotta army buried with him. What wasn't widely publicized were the rivers of mercury within the tomb. Now, what I find beyond coincidence was at the same time, on the other side of the world, the same thing was happening in Teotihuacan.
Lost tombs, underworld rivers, and the hunt for an ancient culture so mysterious it still has no name. This may all sound like the stuff of movies, but in actuality, it may just be real. All of this has come to light after archaeologists in Mexico have come closer to discovering a lost tomb deep beneath an ancient pre-Aztec pyramid. Joe, this is pretty cool stuff. Earlier this month, archaeologists by the name of Sergio Gomez and his team say that while combing through this ancient underground city of Teotihuacan, they found large quantities of mercury in a tunnel. And they say that these large quantities of mercury possibly will lead them to a tomb, a royal tomb, if you will. And bear with me, if they find a royal tomb, they say that the findings therein will help illuminate details of a lost ancient culture that can tell us so much about our modern society. This is really cool.
In the early 1900s, visitors to the primitive Dogon tribe in Africa learned an interesting mythology. The Dogon worshipped gods from the star Sirius. They described Sirius as a trinary star system consisting of the large star visible to us. The second star they described as a very heavy white dwarf, and the third was a dim red star. The Dogon stated that their gods were from a planet orbiting the third dim red star. The Dogon mythology gained new consideration in 1970 when a heavy white dwarf was discovered orbiting Sirius. And then, in 1995, advanced telescopes spotted a third very dim red star orbiting Sirius. Now, if we didn't have the technology to confirm that Sirius was a trinary star system until our modern era, how did the Dogon get this information? I have often heard people say, why aren't there ever sightings over major cities? Would it surprise you to know that there are?
August 25th, 1951 in Lubbock, Texas. In the middle of the evening, a lot of witnesses saw this. Some of the key witnesses were these professors at Texas Technical College, and they see this pattern of lights. It's like bluish green, and it's like in a boomerang formation going right over them silently. And they are astonished by what they see. There's no other way to put this. It just blew their mind.
The Lubbock case was unusual because of the caliber of the witnesses and their academic credentials. And I believe that's why the case remained so prominent in the files.
Fortunately, they were photographed by a young man named Carl Hart, who actually took a series of photographs that are very interesting and have been studied quite a lot by photo analysts and UFO researchers. Edward Ruppelt was brought into what was then called Project Grudge in 1951, and they come up with this explanation that these lights were birds, late at night, getting reflection off the underside of their bellies by the types of street lights or the light that were in the city at the time.
The problem with that is that there were many observers and they had seen birds before. So the idea that those were simply a flock of birds really isn't a good explanation. It could have been under certain circumstances, but in that particular setting, it does not explain the data.
It was dubbed Britain's Roswell. The story goes that a number of US servicemen saw an alien spacecraft near their Air Force base in Rendlesham Forest in Suffolk in 1980. The reports were taken so seriously that they were fully investigated by the American military.
In 1980, at RAF Bentwaters military base, over multiple nights, soldiers witnessed a UFO, its landing, and the colonel in charge turned in this report. In 1991 Mexico City, thousands filmed a UFO over the city as they were preparing to film the scheduled eclipse.
For the first time on American television, an in-depth look at the largest documented UFO sighting in history. Every week since 1991, thousands of unidentified flying objects have been sighted over Mexico City. And there are people who believe this is just the beginning of an alien invasion predicted more than 3,000 years ago. The sightings began on July 11th, 1991. On that day, there was a total eclipse of the sun. One of the best places in the world to view the eclipse was Mexico City. And for the first time, because of the home video revolution, thousands of people pointed their video cameras to the skies.
Exactly at the time of the full solar eclipse, a dish-shaped craft appears over the city, hovers for over 30 minutes. 17 people on the ground recorded it on home video. And that's never happened before in the history of ufology.
Biggest unexplained mysteries of our time, at least here in Arizona. Today marking 21 years since the Phoenix Lights first appeared in the sky. To this day, nobody really knows what they were or where they came from.
It's been that long, huh?
And that's just a small example. There was the invasion of Washington, D.C. in 1952, the Stevensville, Texas flap, which happened in 2008, the Battle of L.A. in 1942, where the military actually engaged a UFO right over the city. These aren't your average UFO witnesses.
October 1969. A young politician is leaving a fundraising event in Georgia when he spots a large, eerie object glowing in the evening sky.
When he looks up in the sky and he sees an object, it's an object that is big. It's bigger than the moon. And he thinks to himself, that's the darndest thing I ever saw.
There is no reasonable explanation for the strange object he is seeing in the sky. It truly is something he can't identify.
It's flashing, it's moving nearer to him and moving further away. He's sure he's seen a UFO.
The witness is so disturbed by what he's seen, he files a report with the National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena, NICAP, and the International UFO Bureau.
These two agencies at the time were professional investigators, made up of scientists and astronomers, and this is the very type of object that they would have investigated.
The report sounds like many other UFO sightings, but it's not. What makes this report stand out is the identity of the witness.
You can still see the document of the sightings online, and the witness has signed his name, Jimmy Carter.
Yeah, the guy who saw and reported the UFO was the future president of the United States, Jimmy Carter.
Now, you are from Roswell, is that correct?
That is correct.
So you grew up in Roswell, right?
I wasn't born there, but my early years were in Roswell. I started school in Roswell and was in the valley within 35 miles of Roswell throughout all of my youth and into adolescence before I went off to college.
So you certainly heard about the Roswell incident, did you?
Yes, I knew about the Roswell incident, and because my family were farmers and ranchers, we knew the people, presumably where the alien craft came down, and that was in the lore of the period. And I have no first-hand experience of alien culture or alien craft, but only through what I call the old-timers, the people who were there at the time and heard their stories, and then in my later life have investigated some and realized that we have been visited many times.
So you're saying that an alien spacecraft came down in Roswell in 1947?
Well, on a ranch near Roswell in 1947, up north and west of the town itself, on the ranch.
What makes you believe that?
Well, but the old timers that talked about it, the military people, the intelligence people from that period, who, because I was an astronaut and went to the moon, were willing to talk about it. And even though they were on security oath, they wanted to pass on their stories before they died, and I was selected to do that.
And did they tell you so before 1980, before the whole story became public?
No, well, I think it's become public over the years. There were people that knew over the years. No, it was in the 1980s or so that I became quite convinced that what they were telling me was true.
So these were high-ranking military people?
Well, some were. There were some people that were military and intelligence people of considerable rank.
Okay, so what do you think happened to the remnants of, to what crashed there?
I really don't know. It was carried off and sent somewhere, and I suspect to a military facility somewhere. I don't know for sure the answer to that one.
Can you imagine that there's some kind of back engineering program going on?
Well, I think there probably has been. How successful it is, I don't know. There's much about the program that is still very mysterious, of course.
Although as Minister of National Defense, I had sighting reports of UFOs. I was too busy to be concerned about them at the time because I was trying to unify the Army, Navy, and Air Force into a single Canadian Defense Force. There are huge issues here, huge issues. And the American people and the people of the world have a right to know what's going on because they're part of it. It's not just an isolated thing. UFOs are as real as the airplanes flying overhead. That gave me the dubious distinction of being the first person of cabinet rank in the G8 group of countries to say so unequivocally. Well, enough on that for now. My interest is in full disclosure. And my only caveat is I think probably I would say 95 to 98% full disclosure. I know of one or two things that I'm not sure should be in the public domain, at least yet. They will be someday, I'm sure, but not maybe immediately. I think that tax-paying citizens are quite capable of accepting the new and broader reality that we live in a cosmos teeming with life of various sorts. The fact that some other civilizations are more advanced than we are may be humbling. It exists, and it's being kept secret by the same vested interests who control our destiny. Who are these vested interests, and what are they up to? Well, Senator, you were talking about a military junta. In my opinion, that is true, but I have broadened and deepened the definition to cabal, and the cabal comprises members of the Three Sisters, the Council on Foreign Relations, the Bilderbergers, and the Trilateral Commission, the International Banking Cartel, the Oil Cartel, members of various intelligence organizations, and select members of the military junta, who together have become a shadow government of not only the United States, but of much of the Western world. The aim of the game is a world government comprising members of the cabal who are elected by no one and accountable to no one. And according to Mr. Rockefeller, the plan is well advanced. Does this help you to understand why our civil rights are being taken away from us? I say us, because Canada too is included in the grand plan.
I know what you're thinking, but these are from before the age of Photoshop. And the source? Space programs. This photo shows an artificial tower built on the moon. It was taken in 1965 by the Russian Zond 3 mission. Photo ID, frame 25. This photo shows a satellite dish on the moon. It was taken by Apollo 16. NASA image AS-16-21-19438. This video is from Shuttle Mission 48. It shows a UFO appear in our atmosphere, but the craft immediately changes course to avoid a missile fired at it from the surface of the Earth. This video is from Shuttle Mission 114. It shows a UFO fly by and then do a complete U-turn.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army. Army officers say the missile, found sometime last week, has been inspected at Roswell, New Mexico, and sent to Wright Field, Ohio, for further inspection.
Soon after Roswell Airfield announced the recovery of the saucer, General Ramey declared that the metallic saucer was just a weather balloon. Over the decades, the Air Force would make 2 more outrageous statements regarding the Roswell incident, including claiming they had crash test dummies attached to the weather balloon.
Dr. Dave Rudiak is a research scientist who believes he has found the long-hoped-for smoking gun of the Roswell incident in a photograph that's been in the public record since 1947.
Even though I had believed that something very unusual had happened at Roswell, I was surprised at what I read in here. I wasn't expecting to see some of this stuff.
Rudiak has spent the last 2 years using computer imaging to analyze what Roswell researchers know as the Ramey memo.
First, there was the Roswell-based press release. About an hour after the press release, General Ramey was already speaking on the phone to reporters in the Pentagon press room and saying it looked like a weather balloon to him and a radar target, and that is in fact what is pictured here. So they brought in the photographer from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. He took 6 photos. 4 of the photos have General Ramey, and he's holding this message in his hand. In 3 of those photos, the message is turned away from the camera. In this particular photo, though, for some reason, it's facing the camera. And fortunately for us, the image is of sufficient quality that we can read quite a bit of the message. And if we zoom in here, you can obviously make out some of the words quite easily. Here's the word disc, and it's in quotes because there's a new use of the word, and they typically put the word disc in quotes. Another group of words that everybody sees are right here. It's Fort Worth, Texas.
Another key word was identified, both by Rudiak and other researchers who have analyzed the memo.
Up here is a key word that was picked out by the first group. They read this as victims up here. Here's a graphic of this keyword victims. These letters underneath are actual teletype font. I'm just assuming that we have these 4 letters. The question is how many words in the English language will fit that? And here they are. The only word that seems to fit is victims. So the word victims is critical because it's really the first documentary confirmation that there actually were casualties or bodies involved with Roswell. It's all been based on witness testimony up to this point.
Rudiak believes that by piecing together the most legible words and phrases, even the simplest reading of the Ramey memo is incriminating.
Of course, if you have this phrase up here, which is in the first paragraph, says, and the victims of the wreck. If there were victims, this can't be explained by a balloon crash. This is one of 7 known photographs that was taken at Fort Worth Army Airfield on July 8, 1947. This is General Roger Ramey seated here. Next to him is his Chief of Staff, Colonel Thomas Dubose, who later said that this weather balloon that they had displayed was just a cover story that they used to get the press off their backs.
After 2 years of research, Dr. Rudiak believes he has interpreted the entire text of the memo in General Ramey's hand.
So here's the first paragraph. It reads, Fort Worth Army Airfield acknowledges that a disc, again in quotes, is the next new find west of the cordon. If I'm reading this correctly, they found the main disc west of the cordon, and General Ramey is confirming this. And then it goes into this phrase, and the victims of the wreck. You forwarded to possibly the team, some sort of team at Fort Worth, Texas. You have something in the disc, the aviators in the disc. They were going to ship them by a B-29 special transport. It's abbreviated as ST. or a C-47. I have about 80% confidence in what I have here. I think at least 80% of the words are correct here. I think even if people can test most of the words that I've come up with, that there's enough words that are clear enough, such as in the disk, victims of the wreck, that it puts the lie to the whole balloon explanation, and also to the Air Force's claim in 1994 that nothing could be read in this message.
The small town of Roswell has definitely embraced its UFO heritage. In 1989, Bob Lazar appeared on KLAS-TV stating that he worked at a substation of Area 51 called S4 so he could back engineer recovered UFOs for the government. Bob Lazar described an exotic unknown substance he called Element 115 that was the fuel for the disk. Despite having evidence he did work for the government, most people dismissed his claims at that time.
Lund University, Sweden, August 27th, 2013. Researchers confirm the existence of a new element on the periodic table created through nuclear fusion. They name it ununpentium, or element 115. Although most scientists still don't know much about this unique radioactive component, it shares commonalities with plutonium used in experimental rocket fuels.
Element 115 has its own lore in UFO history. So this was said to be an element described by a gentleman named Bob Lazar, who claimed to have worked just south of Area 51 on an ET flying saucer.
The government is holding 9 alien spacecraft that are propelled by a modified gravity generator. Work is being conducted 15 miles south of Groom Lake at that isolated area only, designated as S4, that at least one of those crafts operate.
According to what Lazar said, these alien craft ran on element 115. And there's no evidence that we have this even occurring naturally anywhere on Earth. Well, it turns out that scientists now claim to have created element 115 by atomic collisions.
I think this recent discovery of ununpentium really does help us understand the significance of Bob Lazar's testimony. This was a man who was exposed to a very rare element that was allegedly part of the propulsion system of an extraterrestrial vehicle.
30 years ago today, KLAS aired a live interview with an anonymous man who made some really astonishing claims. He alleged that the U.S. military was secretly studying alien technology out in the Nevada desert near a base that is now very well known all over the world, Area 51.
A lot has changed in the decades since Bob Lazar first told this wild story. The Pentagon recently admitted that it really has been secretly studying UFOs, and then it wanted to figure out and duplicate that technology.
Where the study of UFOs did not end in 1969 with Project Blue Book. In fact, that was a lie, and it is now an admitted lie by our own Pentagon. We are living in a world where it is understood that there are craft technologically advanced from unknown origin that are performing maneuvers that far exceed anything of human technology. This has been going on a long time, and our government has been studying it.
George Knapp, 8 News Now. Former Pentagon intelligence officer Lou Elizondo was in charge of ATIP, the secret Pentagon study. He told us one goal of the project was to determine the physics of UFOs, how they can achieve the seemingly impossible. The military came to believe the craft relied on special metamaterials, stuff that can't be made with known technology. Lazar made similar claims decades ago and was ridiculed.
We can explore the moon and develop the moon. We should go boldly where man has not gone before. Fly by the comets, visit asteroids, visit the moon of Mars. There's a monolith there, a very unusual structure on this little potato-shaped object that goes around Mars once in 7 hours. When people find out about that, they're going to say, who put that there? Who put that there?
SETI has been searching for intelligent life for a long time now. We may have actually found it just recently.
So there's this star, nearly 1,500 light years away from Earth. And we have this telescope that's been staring right at it for a number of years. But scientists say something strange keeps getting in between the telescope and the star. They can't figure out what it is. Let's bring in CBS News science contributor Michio Kaku. Okay, what is happening? Why is this star causing scientists to wonder in fascination what might be out there?
Well, we don't know, and this could be the biggest story of the past 500 years, bigger than the discovery of America by Columbus, or it could be the biggest wild goose chase since the Loch Ness Monster.
Okay, well, now you've given us a huge dichotomy of possibilities. Let's explain it. This is a star called KIC. I like to call it KIC, but it's KIC 8462852. That's its official name. The Kepler Space Telescope is out there. Can you explain why scientists and why space lovers are fascinated by what's happening with this?
This star is breaking all the rules. We have to rewrite astronomy textbooks. Basically, if a planet eclipses the mother star, goes in front of the mother star, starlight drops by maybe 1% at maximum. However, starlight has been dropping at 22%. There is a colossal, humongous object of some sort blocking the starlight from this star.
Okay, so imagine if you're in a movie theater and you see the spotlight coming from behind you, and on the stage what you're seeing is a huge nebulous rectangle of shadow, and you don't know what's causing the rectangle of shadow on the stage, right? Something like that. Okay, could it be an alien superstructure?
That's what we're speculating. We've ruled out all the usual suspects, rogue planets, comets, asteroids. What's left but Star Trek? We're talking about what is called a Type 2 civilization that could build a gigantic sphere, perhaps bigger than Jupiter, to absorb starlight. And this, of course, is right out of science fiction, but here we are staring at it, and we have no logical explanation other than to assume that perhaps, just perhaps, it's made by a civilization a few thousand years more advanced than ours, like the Federation of Planets.
Wait, does that put us back in like Cro-Magnon status?
Well, compared to them, yes. We are what is called a Type 0 civilization. We get our energy from oil and coal. Type 1 would be like Buck Rogers, planetary civilization. This civilization is stellar. They can manipulate the energy of a star if it pans out.
Okay, so I'm left baffled because they also spotted this star in 2009. This is October 2015. Why are we just talking about it now?
Because, as Carl Sagan said, remarkable claims require remarkable proof. If you're going to say that this discovery ranks with the discovery of America by Columbus, if it's on that kind of scale, you better be sure that it's not some kind of hoax or some kind of dust on the telescope.
And if this potential hypothetical civilization is 1,000 years more advanced than we are, why haven't they made contact with us? Are we as human beings just not ready for that?
Well, if you go down a country road and see an anthill, do you go down to the ants and say, I bring you trinkets, I bring you beads, I give you nuclear energy, take me to your ant queen? Or you have this politically incorrect urge to step on a few of them?
Yeah, right. That's a very good point. It's equally as good as my theater metaphor.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I like both.
So why should they land on the White House lawn? We have nothing to offer them. If they can build an object bigger than Jupiter, I mean, we have nothing to offer them.
Are we going to get answers in our lifetime about this?
Well, next we're going to focus our radio telescope to see whether we can eavesdrop on their I Love Lucy. Maybe they too have, Leave It to Beaver and TV shows like that. So we're going to focus our radio efforts now on this star to see whether there's any regular radio emissions from that planet.
What this star showed is something very, very large and very, very dark appeared to be passing between us and the star. It's not a planet because we know that it's not round and it doesn't orbit at a fixed period.
One crazy, wild speculation is maybe this dimming of the star comes from something that ET is doing.
One idea that has been suggested is that what we're seeing is actually some very, very large structure that has been built by an advanced civilization. These are called Dyson structures or Dyson spheres, to collect large amounts of energy from the star.
I don't think it's true, 1 in a billion chance. Nevertheless, we've got this spectacular LISTEN instrumentation that's going to enable a very sensitive, broad search of Tabby's star.
The Breakthrough LISTEN program here at Berkeley has access to the largest telescopes on the planet, the most powerful SETI equipment on the planet. So we can look at Tabby's star with greater sensitivity and for a wider range of signal types than any other experiment in the world. The Green Bank telescope is the largest fully steerable radio telescope on the planet. We've deployed a fantastic new SETI instrument that connects to that telescope. We can look at many, many different billions of radio channels all at the same time. If there is technology around that star, we have the best odds of finding it with the Green Bank telescope.
We collect many hundreds of gigabytes a day of data. So it's a lot of data to process.
It's possible that the telescope position there is just enough.
So if we do find a signal that may be interesting, there's no way we can actually singularly confirm here at Berkeley that that's aliens. At that point, other scientists will get involved. If we can confirm that's an actual signal, that's when we start writing papers and collecting Nobel Prizes.
Is something really out there? 3 more U.S. senators received a classified briefing about UFOs at the Pentagon, or in current lingo, unidentified aerial phenomena. You may have heard that pilots and other military personnel have been reporting these kinds of sightings for years. A couple weeks ago, the Department of Defense even released footage shot by a Navy Super Hornet pilot. But you may not have known that back in 2007, Congress directed the Pentagon to set up a $22 million search for the truth. And Tom Foreman is with me more on the Advanced Aviation Threat Identification Program. So Tom, talk to me about these senators getting the classified briefings on UFOs.
Yeah, well, here's the interesting thing. It's easy to laugh at this, easy to think it's silly or it's just a bunch of hokum out there. But Senator Mark Warner, who is the vice chair of the Intelligence Committee, said, look, I think it's important. He told us just this afternoon, I think it's important that the military is taking this more seriously now than they did in the past. So what are they taking seriously? Those videos you were talking about relate to a couple of different sightings we're talking about. In 2004, there was one called the Tic Tac sighting. They called it that because they said it looked like a Tic Tac flying out there very close to the water on the West Coast. And then more recently, there were some out on the East Coast that people were talking about, 2014, 2015, where these pilots were describing seeing these things up to 30,000 feet in the air, flying at extraordinary speeds, hypersonic, well over the speed of sound, changing direction in the most astonishing ways, and seemingly defying the laws of physics. Listen to what one of these pilots had to say.
No distinct wings, no distinct tail, no distinct exhaust. It seemed like they were aware of our presence because they would actively move around us.
In 1990, water and life was believed unique and rare in the galaxy and universe. Now, in the year 2020, we know water is abundant throughout the cosmos, and the discovery of thousands of exoplanets has expanded our perception of the galaxy. We've learned that comets, asteroids, moons, and numerous planets are flourishing with amino acids, water, and the building blocks of life. Mathematically speaking, the universe is teeming with microbial life, has vast amounts of plant or animal life, and occasionally spawns intelligent life. This is Route 3 in New Hampshire. In 1961, Betty and Barney Hill were driving back from a Canadian vacation down Route 3 at 10:30 p.m. just 1 mile south of Indian Head Resort when they were abducted by aliens. After being subjected to medical tests, they were returned 2 hours later. This case is so significant, the state installed a historical marker along the highway. During the abduction, Betty Hill witnessed and memorized a star map the aliens were referencing. In the mid-60s, astronomers could not relate the map to any known stars, but with the more advanced telescopes of the 1970s, Betty's star map finally made sense. So how did a woman of the 1960s gain advanced astronomical knowledge of the cosmos unless her claim of abduction is true? Dr. Roger Lear has removed numerous alien implants and conducted scientific studies on them.
And the implant is finally removed. Dr. Lear describes some of the extraordinary findings discovered during this amazing surgery.
There is no portal of entry. There's no evidence how the object got inside the body. Then when we look at the soft tissues that surround the object, we find there is no inflammatory response. This is impossible because anything that enters the body should have an inflammatory response. And then thirdly, they are surrounded by a large number of nerve proprioceptors which are not anatomically correct.
Once the outer biological membrane was removed, it revealed a triangular-shaped object. This object was housed in yet another gray membrane. Remarkably, this inner membrane could not be cut, even with a surgical scalpel. The implant was then sent to Los Alamos National Laboratory for metallurgic testing.
We knew that when we got the initial report back from Los Alamos that we didn't have something that was common, because Los Alamos is a world-class laboratory and would not recommend further testing on anything that they didn't feel was strange. So it was the combination of elements that were in these objects that I think inspired them to advise us that more tests should be done.
The implants were then sent to New Mexico Tech Laboratory, where a battery of metallurgic tests were performed on the objects.
The theory that they put forth was that these were portions of meteorites. They did not know they were removed from the human body.
Amazingly, the New Mexico Tech Lab report revealed that the elements in the implants were composed of meteorites so rare, only a few had ever been found. At this point, scanning electron microscope analysis was conducted on the implants. The results revealed the implants were manufactured and not naturally occurring meteorites. Amazingly, results showed the implants had been connected to the patient's nerve endings.
The second set of tests following some of the tests that were run at New Mexico was run by University of California at San Diego.
The laboratory results from the University of California at San Diego confirmed the earlier tests. Astonishingly, a portion of the metal analyzed in the implants was extraterrestrial and did not come from Earth.
Some of the elements that were found in combination were of non-terrestrial or extraterrestrial origin.
The evidence is overwhelming. The implications are staggering. In each case, the chain of evidence has been documented, and the test results are shocking.
This could be the proof that science has been looking for. The implications of this discovery are worldwide.
I have a degree as a Bachelor of Science, Doctor of Podiatric Medicine. I did research with Dow Corning for bone replacement implants. I've participated in research in tendon regeneration. I have a good knowledge of the biological workings of the human body. I was also, for 3 years, the chairman of a committee at the Cedars of Lebanon Hospital in Hollywood, California, head of the diabetic clinic, and director of residency training program at a hospital in Simi Valley, California. If anyone had told me at that time that I would be involved in anything in the UFO field or traveled to 42 countries and participated in the things that I have participated in relative to UFOs, I would have said they're nuts. I, with my surgical team of medical specialists, performed 16 surgeries for the removal of foreign objects from those individuals who allege alien abduction. The 16 cases involved the removal of 17 separate and distinct objects. One of these objects turned out to be a small run of ceramic-like glass, which was manufactured by Dow Corning Industries. In almost my 50 years of podiatric surgical practice, I have removed literally hundreds or numerous objects from the human foot, including paper, glass, metal, stones, hair, coral, many other objects, including secret metal. At one time, a patient came in with two gentlemen in suits and the proper identification. He worked as a machinist for an aerospace company. I removed the object and they said, please. And so I handed them the material that I removed from the individual's foot. Later come to find out that it was a new material that was experimental for the use of rocket valves in rocketry. The individuals involved in the study all presented with no noted portal of entry for any of the objects that were removed. There was no visible scar formation, and there was no interruption of the integrity of the skin, even when examination was performed with a magnifying loupe, not only examining the area involved, but a large amount of the peripheral area. All the individuals in the study presented with positive X-rays or CT scans showing metallic or lesser dense foreign objects. Prior to the surgical procedures performed, the areas of interest were examined by the use of a Gauss meter for magnetic or electromagnetic emissions. 10 of them were found to be producing readings on a Gauss meter of 6 to 10 milligauss. That is a large amount for a very small object that varies in size from approximately 6 to 10 millimeters in length and about the diameter of a pencil lead. Now, I understand that from the crew here and some of the television people I've worked with, that a modern television camera produces about 4.3 milligauss of emissions. So here's a very small object producing 10 milligauss of emissions. Now, in addition to these type of examinations, we used frequencies of ultraviolet light to detect fluorescence in the area of the object. About 60% presented with positive UV light fluorescence with color ranges from pink, green to yellow. One of the last surgical patients displayed a large chevron-appearing area like an insignia on the outside of the right arm near the shoulder. He had no prior knowledge of it being there. We have also found that the removal of this fluorescent material with ordinary solvents only makes them disappear for intervals of approximately 1 hour. But when re-examined again, they appear again with the use of ultraviolet light with varying frequencies. In addition, by use of radio wave frequency detector, we were able to detect that certain radio frequencies in the FM band, both in the megahertz and kilohertz range, were being emitted from the object. It was determined that in one case, the frequencies detected, and this is through a chart that I was able to obtain through sources that I will not be able to mention, but these frequencies were noted fixed or mobile deep space frequencies. Unfortunately, our limited budget for performing this research has not allowed us to obtain a radio frequency analyzer so that a radio wave could be captured and analyzed. All surgeries
Doctor, you
were
have
performed.
about 1 minute. I just wanted to make you aware of that, so you got about 1 minute.
Yes, sir. All the surgeries we performed were documented with eyewitnesses, video, and still photography. We established a chain of criteria and protocols for a forensic chain of custody. All the objects were placed in sterile containers using the patient's own blood serum. These containers are then signed and not opened again until they reach the laboratories. I will skip some of the material because of time constraints. We find that in all pathological reports, there is no inflammatory reaction. There is no rejection reaction. There is no, in exhaustive research of human science, there is nothing that we have found in material science that will produce absolutely no inflammatory reaction in the human body. These objects all do. Also, in addition, they are surrounded by a large amount of specialized nerve endings called proprioceptors, and these are areas which are not consistent with Gray's anatomy. The pathology reports and examination we have sent to material science laboratories. Some of these include Los Alamos National Laboratories, New Mexico Tech, University of California at San Diego, Southwest Laboratories in San Antonio, Texas, as well as numerous other laboratories outside the country. ANS research scientists and our science board has enabled us to do some of our own scientific studies. I've already described some of the length and size of the object, so
Doctor, I absolutely hate to do this, but your time has expired.
Beginning in the 1940s, the world's governments have been working in unison to create a campaign of disinformation and denial regarding aliens. However, for the past few decades, there seems to be an indoctrination program in place as they are slowly preparing society for the extraterrestrial reality. It began in the 1990s with the discovery of exoplanets and the announcement that a meteorite from Mars contained fossilized microbes.